Hello, I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Leveraging Technology to Drive Career Success in Treasury. I would like to thank our webinar partner today, TIS, whose strong commitment to thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible and also shares my commitment to serving the Treasury profession. Treasury professionals are being charged with delivering value beyond finance. This means mitigating time spent on non-value-add activities and delivering on the blocking and tackling of Treasury while taking on a leadership role in driving performance management across the enterprise. How do Treasury professionals deliver forecasts that matter, manage cash and bank relationships, and manage financial risk while delivering business analysis that impacts performance across the enterprise? What skills do Treasury professionals need in today's world and why? Today, you will discover what fuels career success in Treasury in today's world. My speaking partner and I will discuss the evolving role of Treasury technology in Treasury success, how to leverage technology to your advantage, and how to embrace business partnering to impact decisions across the enterprise. Before I delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about Treasury webinars, cover a few housekeeping items, and welcome my esteemed co-speaker today for today's webinar, Giancarlo Odini. Treasury webinars, we offer webinars designed to empower the career success of Treasury, AP, and AR professionals at companies of all sizes across all industries. We only do what we do best, which is webinars. For those of you interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions, remain on for the duration of the webinar, and answer the post-webinar survey, which will launch immediately following the webinar today. If you have any questions regarding CTP credit, please send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Again, that's ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Also, send me an email if you would like a copy of today's webinar slides. We'd like to hear from you today, so we encourage you to ask your questions at any time in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll do our best to get to your questions if we have time for a Q&A session at the end. Fear not, if we don't get to your questions, we will reach out to you directly. Finally, we appreciate your consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. Now it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Giancarlo Odini, Senior Vice President of TIS, to the webinar. Giancarlo is responsible for global sales operations at TIS, Swift Partner Management, and the TIS Global Partner Program. He's a domain expert in payments, bank connectivity, bank account management. He has a strong multicultural knowledge. He's been in the IT industry for over 20 years, gaining international experience in cash management, electronic banking, and strategic involvement in global payments factory for large multinational clients. He's a gentleman and a scholar. Giancarlo, welcome to the webinar, my friend.
Thank you very much, Ernie. Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
So let's just start things out with the agenda for our journey today. So let's really start out with what Treasury success looks like in today's world and how that's continuing to evolve. And then we'll look at Treasury technology. And I always say friend or foe because there's a lot of changes going on in the world of technology and Treasury. And in Treasury and finance, we've been a little bit risk averse to technology, but now is a once in a generation opportunity to embrace technology to redefine the value of Treasury and push us all up to that role of CEO and CFO. And then we'll go ahead and dive into leveraging technology in Treasury. We'll talk about relationship building. So we'll talk about the soft skills that we need, and then we'll go into the art of collaboration, which I don't think gets nearly enough attention. So we can all talk about it as a high level. How is it actually done? And then we'll have some really compelling content from Giancarlo. Well, he'll dive into what do you want to do in your first 100 days as a Treasury leader? So let's take this from theory to action. So we've done all these things. We have our skills. We've made it, right? We've made it to our Treasury leadership. Now, what do we need to do to make sure that we kick things off correctly and put us on a path for success for our entire Treasury department? Then we'll wrap things up with some Q&A. So what does Treasury success look like in today's world? Just want to take a little look at some research. And so when we start to look at our research, we see the usual suspects at the top here, right? So you've got working capital management, we've got cash forecasting, and I'm glad to see. I want to see bank relationship management go up because it really, when I was in Treasury, this was like number one. So I like to see working capital here. I think we give a little bit too much attention to cash forecasting. Not that it's not important, but I think there's other things that are more important. I'm also I'm very happy to see that Treasury levels and skill sets are up here in the top 5. And so really what we want to look at, okay, we want to make sure we have the right priorities, right? And now we got to look at, and we want to look at those priorities in setting those as Treasury leaders. What is it that's going to offer the most value? So what do I want to see up here? I want to see business partnering. Right, so this is something that I want to see up here. So maybe it's relationship management. So this is what we want to see, and we also might want to see communicating with impact. So I hope I can incentivize some folks to take a look at those, and so just kind of level set and just think about those as we go forward. And so this is what I believe are the pillars of Treasury success in today's world. And so we have our technical skills. Right, so we have our technical skills, the things we need to do, and this is evolving. So we need to upgrade our analytical skills. We need to understand technology beyond Excel. Excel is extremely important and valuable. We need to understand what's out there in terms of Treasury technology, AP, AR, automation, artificial intelligence. So we need to have those technical skills, and we need to have someone on our team that has those skills. So what Treasury success looks like, you can look at this from an individual or departmental level, but you want to have a great level of acumen on each of these, right? And in your team, you want to make sure that you have one person who has a good level of acumen, a great level of acumen that can cross-train. So we need to have that diverse skill set. We need to have a business acumen. So we're charged with delivering information that impacts performance across the enterprise. We need to look at how we communicate with impact. And then we want to look at our relationships. We want to look at those internal relationships within Treasury, across departments, but also our relationships outside of Treasury. So how do we become better partners to our banks, to our providers, and to the different set of providers that we may have in terms of all the applications in the cloud we might be managing? And then we want to be able to collaborate. Relationships and collaborate, obviously, there's a lot of overlap there, but how do we collaborate? How do we build mutually beneficial relationships? How do we become, an overused word, strategic trusted advisor, not only within our department, but also with our service providers? Are we such good customers that they ask us to speak with them? They ask us to beta test things, so we need to put some, we've put some effort there. And then we have strategic value. So we need to look at what are the pillars of success for our company, right? What are we looking to do? Are we looking to deepen our customer relationships? How are we going to drive growth? And make sure that the performance metrics that we have in terms of ourselves and our department align with the strategic goals of our company. So we need to be a trusted advisor. So we need to incent the actions within our department that add value that we deliver to our customers, not the perceived value, the actual value, and they need to perceive that as well. And so all these things are, if you are mastery in all these things, keep these things top of mind. I would print out this slide. Think about this in your professional development and also the professional development of your staff. Giancarlo, do you have any thoughts here?
No, I think from my experience, I think the pillar to success in Treasury is to do with having, I would say, first of all, is that relationship with your partners, with your business partners, because the role of the Treasurer today is changing. So at the time when I was in Treasury, it was different from today, definitely a difference there. And what I like this presentation, it gives clear structure about the technical skills. Yeah, you still need those skills there. You need to know the collaboration within your organization, and but you as a treasurer, you have a real strategic value in the organization, and you need to find, let's say, the right partners that support you. It could be your accounting department. It can be your people from the shared service center. It can be somebody from risk or control, depending on the organizational structure. So there are many different treasury structures. And at the end, the value you get can be only managed if you can really have a clear picture of what's happening in front of you. But we will get into this later on. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you so much. It's so important, right? In Treasury, we have the opportunity to touch all areas of the business. So the more you know about the business, the more you know about everyone's challenges and up the opportunities. We need to speak their language. And so when I can go and talk about the industry dynamics to my sales team, if I know what SEO and SEM for marketing, we can speak their language and we can teach them the language of finance, and then the world is a perfect place, right? And so I think one thing that's not really talked about a lot is how technology empowers more productive relationships. And it really all starts, in my mind, with visibility. So it's not like we want to go in and change everything and tell everyone how to do their job. Once we have visibility into the dynamics of the relationships that we have internally and externally with our partners, with each other, we can communicate effectively. We can communicate across the globe in real time. We have that 360 view of relationships dynamics. That's incredibly powerful. And so what you want to look at is what is the technology that we have. Interdepartmental. So within, this sounds like common sense. Within Treasury, like as Giancarlo mentioned, we may have a shared service center. We may have folks across the globe that are helping us manage our priorities in Treasury. So we need to make sure that we have the technology that allows us to communicate. Some of the amazing applications now allow us to chat in real time, with our folks. We can send out automatic emails. Hey, what's going on with this numbers? Or just, hey, you can see you're both logged in. Hey, John, how are you doing? How you come with that forecast? And then interdepartmental, we can look across departments. And so I was speaking on the webinar the other day, just talking about how in accounts receivable, wouldn't it be nice if we looked at sales professionals as our partners instead of our foes? And so when we're going to communicate with our customers, how about letting our sales guys know, and let's get on the same page and manage all communications with our customer. And then external, which as Giancarlo mentioned, is fantastic. It's becoming more and more important because we have more and more to do, and the more that we can engage our partners outside of Treasury and our company, the better off we're going to be. So we'll talk about banks and Treasury service providers, and then our suppliers. And so the better relationships that we have with suppliers and customers, we can control how and when we pay, and then how and when we get paid. Extremely powerful. And in today's world of these market dynamics, sometimes our suppliers and our customers become our partners in joint ventures. And so really just a lot of this content is trying to make you think, in addition to giving you specific advice, and say, what are some barriers to communication that I have? What would I like to see? And you'll be amazed when you start looking out. Oh, there's things out there. So what can I do? What kind of applications can we look at? From usually the technology now is from that CFO level, but how can we do that? And then I just want to talk about why automation and AI should not be feared. They empower together employee productivity. Think about how much time you spend on non-value-add tasks, removes that daily burden, repetitive low-value tasks. And when I've done surveys, I did a couple recent surveys I was involved in, people are spending, Treasury and finance leaders are spending at least 75 to 80% on non-value-add activities. Boo on that, right? Technology allows us to do that. And then if you lead a technology adoption that gives your CFO back 2 or 3 hours a day, guess what? You're going to be the hero, right? We want to free up our employees' time to focus on core business building activities. And then, of course, we can improve internal process efficiency. And then it's amazing what we can see with these AI-based analytics. It really gives us insights into patterns and the best way to communicate with our customers, suppliers, and actually the best way to communicate internally as well. And so this technology learns, right, from mistakes. It learns from the things we do right, the things we do wrong. And so I would encourage you not to be afraid. I would actually encourage you to be the most first person in AI at your company. This is an opportunity for you, people to come to you and look at you as a thought leader in AI, because it's coming, right? Eventually we'll get there. It also makes it easier for your customers and suppliers to do business with you. And so when you're talking to your CFO and you're having that technology discussion, just really communicate to them on all levels, right? What we're doing, we're lowering costs, we're impacting productivity, we're dropping top line growth. Just say, wouldn't it be nice if we could make it easier for our customers and suppliers to do business with us? You know, you might get a smile from your CFO. It happens, believe it or not. So it reduces, errors and bottlenecks. And so how much time do your folks in finance and your staff in treasury spend on the phone with these disputes, geocode disputes, any kind of disputes, AR disputes, AP disputes, bank account disputes, right? You're trying to get there's a bank reconciliation. Why are we on the phone doing these things? We should be able to automate things, improve them, and then in the process of technology, in line with the process, we're going to improve accountability and transparency. And then really what we want to do is we want to empower everyone in our organization to be proactive in their relationship management. And so I think that's incredibly important. And then like it or not, you have no choice but to embrace technology. So this is your wake up slide. If you're not there yet, they're here to stay and will come to your company. You can't afford to panic or ignore it. Use it or it'll take control of your career. When your CFO comes and asks you about AI and automation, you better have an answer. The future is all about value add, so we need to take control of our time. There won't be any more spreadsheet jockeys or process gurus that'll be automated. The real value you provide, which will always be the case, your knowledge, it can't be automated. What you know, your knowledge, who you know, your knowledge of your company, of your industry, that can't be automated. So you need to embrace that and figure out how to improve your acumen across all things. And again, the other part of it is technology, process, anything new. You need to have that appetite. Here's the second time I said this. Learning is a way of life. It's not a chore. So your career trajectory will be determined by your knowledge of the business as proven by your strategic recommendations and nothing else. So let me go ahead and launch our first polling question. I know you guys are all nervous that you haven't had a polling question yet. So let's take a look at asking you, how would you characterize the Treasury technology at your company before we dive into our technology discussion? Would you characterize it as basic? You really only use Excel and Treasury. Intermediate, use Excel, combination ERP module. Are you advanced? Do you have a TMS and maybe you have other cloud applications, AP, AR payments, so possibly you are owning the cash conversion cycle, which I think is something that needs to happen, and I personally think AP and AR will report up to Treasury, but that is the subject of another webinar. I'm going to leave the polling question up only a short amount of time, given the amount of content that we have to get through today. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick peek and just kind of see where we're at. I'm pleasantly surprised that we see 30% or 28% of you are advanced, and so I'm very happy to see that. I'm glad to see we have a low percentage, 14% in Excel. For the other piece, I would just mention that, of course, Excel, but your ERP modules were not made, to own your cash conversion cycle and facilitate impacted performance across the enterprise. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to answer those polling questions. And I want to now hand the floor over to Giancarlo. Giancarlo, let's talk about technology and bank relationship management.
Yeah, I think it's the right moment to start this conversation, because when it comes to technology and the bank relationship manager, I think one of the biggest challenges I had in Treasury was to find out, first of all, with whom am I banking? I mean, it depends obviously on the dimension of your organization. But in some cases, I thought I had a complete overview, but I was missing the complete visibility. So I think if you want to achieve an effective bank relationship management, the first thing you need to know is to have control over what you can see. That's the only way you can have control over what you can see, you have visibility about. And having efficient bank account management means that you have an understanding of which banks offer which services and which accounts are open for which purpose. So you have to really define your treasury strategy. You probably participate in it, or you are actually the owner of it, but you need to understand exactly how and why you're using certain accounts, and that's how you can optimize your bank relationship management. So you can choose the banks with whom you want to make that relationship, and you can have obviously the best option if you have that overview. The communication in person, email, digital, of course, there are different ways nowadays to have your communication to different parties. I'm a big fan, believe it or not, of the communication in person. I think the personal approach has been always the most successful for me. Email, it can be a one-way statement. The digital way, yes, of course, we want to be all digital. It can be possible to be in person, absolutely. but sometimes I like to pick up the phone. I think it's good to hear the voice of my colleagues whenever I need to do a conversation. But sometimes we can, so we have video conferencing that works also, and collaboration. Of course, I mean, you need to have a clear collaboration with your partners, and you have to be a good customer, which means you have to use your right methods in order to get the best, what we call pricing. And but you need to know what charges do you have, especially to understand exactly what are your conditions with whom you are banking. So understanding that, you need to have a very clear pricing structure. So and bank fee management is a very tough topic, so don't take it lightly. It's going to be very tough. So let's move on to the next slide. Exactly, here we can see the return on investment of if you have a good bank relationship management. You will have a very cost-effective access to credit, because you know your credit lines, you know how to use them accurately. Be careful that there's no capital line around which is not being used because it's not being reported. That happened to me personally as a treasurer. Unfortunately, I did not have a clear reporting structure, and there were some accounts in some countries which were not reported, and there was I used to call it dead cash lying around. I ran to the bank, of course, said, hey guys, give me quickly a credit line, I'm running out of cash. And they gave me, of course, they thought, oh great, no problem, we will give you everything you want. But it obviously costs more money, but then there was dead cash there. So be careful there with your credit lines. Obviously you need a very effective reporting and digital communication to affect your payments. So you have to understand which type of payments you're making, through which, let's say, through which channel, and because that will affect tremendously the fees. You could be making individual payments, manual payments, or something like this, and ACH wires or whatever they are, or international payments, and they could be costing you a huge amount of money if you haven't had a good deal with your bank. So be careful about that. That's important. And there are different ways of improving productivity, well and beyond Treasury. So you, from the Treasury department, you collaborate with other departments, with other strategic business partners in your organization, to support them in what I call smart payments and better decisions. But you begin having relationships with the banks you really need, so the most key important ones. And in doing so, of course, you mitigate the risk. You control better the risk. You can have a better control over what's happening, and you basically improve the complete setup. So now I think it's given the technology and bank relationship manager, I think it's time to give back to the word to Ernie and to talk about automation.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo. Let me go ahead and really ask you kind of a follow-up topic. And so we talk about visibility and bank fees, and I know finally what we're starting to see, what we need to see, and what you mentioned briefly is how much it costs with our digital communications to banks, especially global banks, and that visibility there. Can you kind of talk about that just a little bit, and how important that is, and now how we are now able to see the cost and look at better ways of doing that, and what's kind of changed the way we used to do it to the way we do it now? Because I think that's incredibly important, especially for those folks that have a global footprint.
So I think the way we used to do it before, I think you remember, Ernie, the good old Excel method. But that was very dangerous, because that wasn't real time and you didn't have a real overview. It was just, we were forecasting numbers. Today, there are advanced technologies which allow you to have, at the touch of your finger, really at the touch of a button, you can immediately see all the information you need. There are technologies available that provide you the interface to all of your banks. And that's my recommendation. To gain visibility is to have access to all the data. And if you have access to it, it's key to understand the data. So you need also tools in place which translate the data which you receive in a readable and understandable and presentable method. So my definition of understandable data is obviously BI analytics. You need dashboards that help you relatively quickly, without losing too much time, getting exactly to the result, with even dashboards which help you to filter. So I think that's the way you will going to gain visibility, and of course control the fees. How do you control fees? By knowing exactly with which partners you are doing which type of business, which volume of business. Yeah. So be careful that in some contracts there are some minor, let's say, small printed elements which give you limits to the number of messages which you are sending through a channel. And if you go beyond, the prices just go skyrocket. And so please be careful of that. That's the lessons learned I had also in my time. Ernie, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. So some of this technology we are through pretty in a brisk manner. So really, I wanted to get all this information in one place for you to reference. So please ask me for a copy of the presentation. Happy to give that to you. And some of these topics are entire webinars that I've done. I'm happy to point those to you. So please ask me questions. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, you want more information, please let me know. If it's in Giancarlo's wheelhouse, I will direct him your way, and you can have a longer conversation. And so you want to really understand how automation and AI allows us to take control of the cash conversion cycle. And this is my soapbox. AP and AR need to report up through Treasury. Now, first we have to have visibility into what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then eventually we'll all see that it makes sense. And so automation and AI play a role in supplier information management. How many of you have had that problem? Subsidiaries, just your master account, incredibly painful. What's going on now in the technology world is we are having supplier portals. They're managing their own information. They're managing their bank information. It helps us with contract management. AP automation, which I talk about quite a bit, allows us, there's a lot of incredible technology on the AP automation side in terms of our invoice matching, invoice PO matching. We have T&E expense management, and then we have payment and supply chain financing, the right payment visibility, and also information into our cost structures allows us to optimize our payment type. So we need to start looking at why are we sending checks? How are we doing ACHs? Can we look at credit cards with rebates? And then what opportunities do we have for supply chain financing? So the more efficient and effective we are in processing those payments and invoices, the more we can help out and help energize our supply chain. So if you want to look at technology in AP, done right, you have more control over payments. What does that mean for us Treasury folks? More accurate cash forecasts, improved working capital management, gives us better relationships with suppliers. Do we have a disruption in our supply chain? Absolutely. You better have a good relationship with your suppliers and make sure that you are communicating with them effectively without friction. I worked in manufacturing. Let me tell you, those friction points are not fun. You have cost-effective invoice processing. Amazed if you've never looked at that. The cost of ineffective invoice processing versus best in class will be at minimum $10 to $15 per invoice for your company. It improves productivity. It gives us our time back to build strategic relationships with suppliers and take more control over how and when we make payments. And then if we look at the OTC side, it's amazing. Actually, I have a webinar coming up next week on cash application, AI and cash application. Amazing. I tell the story a lot, but when I was in Treasury, it took us a week to do cash out for a customer. Helps us in credit management, collection management, dispute management. What does that mean for us in Treasury? We want to get paid, know we're getting paid, control how we're getting paid, making sure we get that in a format that allows us to reduce friction in our cash conversion cycle. So what's our ROI there? Take more control over the receipt timing and type of payments received, more accurate forecasts. Again, looks pretty similar to the last one, right? Better relationships with customers. We impact the customer experience. It took a long time for me to wrap my head around that, but we actually do. We have cost-effective receipt processing. Again, we're making everyone more productive across the enterprise. How much of a great thing is that when you can work with AR and give them part of their day back, right? They're gonna love you. You know, Treasury is, and then it mitigates counterparty risk exposures. So it's valuable on all levels. So now we're going to get into the soft skills, building your professional brand at work. So let's go ahead and ask the next polling question. So let's go ahead and ask this polling question. I want you to share with me, please. I won't tell anybody. Your answers are anonymous. Do you invest in managing your professional brand? Do you strongly disagree, agree, or strongly agree? I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you interested in receiving CTP credits, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions here today. And this is something that I think is incredibly important. Those of you that have seen me speak in person, I often speak on the value of your professional brand. I talk about LinkedIn. It's incredibly powerful. It's actually allowed me to be very knowledgeable on the marketing front, which is really what I do now to pay the bills. And so it's amazing what you can learn by owning your professional brand, driving that, taking control of it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds, and I will be extremely interested to see what I mean by strongly agree. I mean, you think you have the best brand ever. You invest several hours a week in that. And so it's something that you agree that you really spend time on. And Giancarlo will tell you that he knows that I do that because he gets tired of seeing me on LinkedIn. So let's go ahead, close
Fully
that.
agree with you. Absolutely.
So let's take so I'm absolutely thrilled, to be honest with you, to see that 76% of you agree or strongly agree that you invest in your professional brand. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you how to take that to the next level. But here's a piece you might not think about. What's your professional brand at work? Didn't think about that, did you? Well, most people don't. So I'm happy to see that. So Giancarlo, what do you think here?
I'm a little bit concerned because well, on the one side, the results are great. So,
right.
But we still have what is that? That's
24%.
24%, which don't believe in managing in their professional brand. Now, let me tell you something. Now, in my experience, I used to be like this. I used to think, well, I'm going to get through my career. Everybody's going to know me anyway. I don't need to be public everywhere. But I changed my mind because actually through linking up to others in the community, I learned more from the community to exchange experiences and about my profession. So I was able to communicate with fantastic people like Ernie and other colleagues of ours and exchange experiences which I could never done before because I didn't know them. And that allowed me to become extremely successful in my job. So my recommendation is try to use the technology at hand. It will help you to be successful. Thank you, Ernie.
Oh, thank you so much for that context there. And I was trying not to, share everyone knows to me, I'm a big proponent of your brand. I tell people I'm a person who is a Treasury specialist in Bluffton, Indiana. Nobody knows where that is. A lot of it through building my professional brand. I was a subject matter expert at the AFP, which is the national organization for Treasury, and I helped write the certification for Treasury. Now, if anyone thinks that happened without me tooting my own horn a little bit, you're wrong, because you have to bring the goods, but you have to learn how to toot your own horn a little bit. So how do you manage your professional brand at work? So here's some specific tips for you. So know what you know, right? You know what you're an expertise in, know what you know. Don't be afraid to communicate that. Appreciate what you don't know, and this is where I still work on this every day. So don't think you know everything. You want to learn. You want to put yourself around people that you can learn something. Don't be afraid if someone knows more than you. And here's what I hear from the most successful people I've ever met, and I've met tens of thousands of people, is, how are you so successful? I hire people that are smarter than me. That when anyone says that, I would hire them immediately in an interview. Now I have to back that up a little bit, but that immediately says that don't fear. Don't fear anyone encroaching on your territory. Learn from them, build them up to your level, and then go up higher with them. And if they go above you, so be it, and then they'll pull you up. So don't be afraid. Invest in knowing your colleagues. In Treasury, we're not the most social people. I know it's hard. Go out to lunch, sit down on webinars together, right? So just say, hey, I'm on this webinar about whatever it is. Hey, these are pretty good webinars. Why don't you and I grab lunch and let's listen to this webinar together? Let people get to know you. I know this is hard. People say there's a line, business and personal, but and this is more outside the U.S., which is why I love collaborating internationally, they treat people like family. I treat people like family. I treat people like my family. So you may not want to go that far, but let people get to know you. You have to communicate what you know. You have to communicate what you need to know. Don't be afraid to say you don't know something. Reach out to someone that you think is an expert. Ask their advice. How do you know this? And then actively collaborate with your colleagues. So Giancarlo, you have anything to add here?
No, I can only agree. That's the same method I used, and it's up to everyone to choose their methods. But
Right.
I treated everybody like a very good person close to me, and the way I treat my family and friends, and I gained the respect in the organization, of course. I think that's another important thing. And it's down to how you communicate, and obviously the company you work with has to allow you to also be open to this kind of mentality, because not all companies are the same.
Right, exactly. And just kind of dovetail on something that you said that I really latched onto, which I often say is that you have to earn respect. So you don't expect, someone to respect you right at the gate. You have to earn that. So it doesn't matter who in the organization it is, whether you're the person that has the lowest level title, which I hate titles, or you're the CEO. You have to treat everyone with the same, and you have to earn their respect. So you have to earn that. You'll notice these two slides are almost exactly the same within and beyond, because the same strategy works. That's something that Giancarlo mentioned too. And when I was back, I think my first webinar I did for AFP way back in the day, it was called Treasury Relationship Management, Treat Each One Like a Marriage. And so I think what people often fail to do is bring the skills that they have from their personal life into their professional life. And so, you're good, you use skills. I mean, you learn so much from your children, right? And being a coach and all those things. So let's be cognizant of that and move those skills. So same advice for beyond. Know what you know, appreciate, let people get to know you, invest in knowing people, communicate what you know, what you don't know, and let's find opportunities to collaborate. So how do you do that beyond work? So let's go ahead and launch our next polling question here before I delve in there. Also interested in this, get your thoughts. You have the professional network you need to succeed. You strongly disagree, you disagree, you agree, or you strongly agree. And so when I talk about professional network, I tell people you need to look inside your company, within your department, within your company, outside, within your profession, but also in your social life, right? You can bring those people into your professional network as well. So you need to be on, in a sense, as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead, leave the polling question up for another few seconds in order to be mindful of our time. So let's go ahead and give you guys about 3 or 4 more seconds, and we'll take a quick peek at the results, and then we'll really give you some specific advice for developing a professional brand outside of work, which I think is incredibly powerful, and I honestly have not seen people delve into this before. Let's go ahead and close. Let's go ahead and share those results. And a little discouraged, but we're going to motivate you to do this. So there's 34% of you that disagree or strongly disagree. Every one of you better connect with me on LinkedIn, because you and I are going to have a conversation, and so we're going to get you up to speed. So I'm glad to see 66% of you are there, but the 34% of you, you are really tapping this. You really haven't tapped into the success in your career I don't believe that you can have. So I encourage you to reach out to me. So Giancarlo, what are your thoughts here?
I fully agree. I would also link myself to Ernie, because he has an incredible network. I can offer the same if I don't have the network like Ernie, but please feel free to connect to me, and you will have access to I don't know how many thousand contacts I have. So feel free to network to me. And I think it's nowadays. We will go into it in later on your first 100 days as a Treasury leader. The way you network with friends and family, the way you network with colleagues, you should network with the outside world, because you never know when the moment comes and you meet the person who will guide you to your success. So that's my recommendation also.
Oh, thank you very much, Giancarlo. So your professional brand at work. So you have to be on, right? Social events. You have to know your elevator pitch. People say, I can't do my elevator pitch. It's so complicated. I wrote an article on LinkedIn you can do your elevator pitch in 5 minutes. And so again, reach out to me if you want to know how to do that. You have to know your elevator pitch. You have to identify opportunities to collaborate professionally. It's not like you want to go to a social event and start selling people stuff or do that, but let things happen organically as you get to know someone. And oftentimes when you get to know someone and share about yourself, they will reach out to you and say, hey, I also do that. So let that happen organically. At networking events, you have to definitely know your elevator pitch. You have to be charmingly aggressive. I don't know if I'm charming or not, but I'm definitely aggressive. So you can't be afraid. You can't sit in the corner. You have to get yourself geared up. What do you have to do? You have to practice. You need to be aggressive. If someone isn't receptive to you, so what? Right? And you'll learn, right? You have to learn by failure. You'll go up and everyone will give you a strange look. Who cares, right? Anyone who knows me says, Ernie is a little aggressive, but eventually, like a fine wine, Ernie ate, once you get to know Ernie, he's a lot better. But be a little bit, don't be rude, but be charmingly aggressive. Professional events. Know who you want to talk to before you go. Know the connections that you want to make. Speak at events. You speak at events, everyone will reach out to you. So all these things, as I mentioned before, everyone should be on. And then let's go ahead and look at, I talked about if you're not involved in the AFP, if you're in Treasury world, I strongly encourage you to be involved at the AFP on a regional or national level. You can speak at events, attending events, you can serve on committees. You need to leverage your networking opportunities. I encourage you to look at the CTP certification. You can contribute content with the AFP LinkedIn groups. I'm not happy with what's going on with our LinkedIn groups, but contribute content. AFP is always looking for folks to write articles, blogs, content, so please reach out. You know so much. A lot of times I think people are afraid. They think, I don't know this, I don't know that. You have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and AFP would love for you to share that with the Treasury profession. And then be aggressive, and you have to have fun, right? You have to be aggressive at the AFP events. You have to know what you know, and don't be afraid to. I hadn't even been in AFP like 1 month now. I didn't get on the board, but I tried to get on the board, and the people that I met from that, those are still my connections. They interviewed me, which was fantastic because I really hadn't done anything yet, but be aggressive. You never know what can happen. Your online brand at work. I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn, but you also need to be cognizant on Facebook. Don't let worlds collide. Don't let your professional world creep into Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. You should do a Google search of your name. You have to manage that online brand. Your LinkedIn network, you need to build it. Here, it's a good way to do this. Contribute content, share an update, comment on a post, write a LinkedIn article. Now the game is changing a little bit, but follow relevant hashtags. Create and own your own hashtags. So I'm giving you a little bit quick pace here, but please get my presentation. Call me. Let's have a conversation. There's a lot of very valuable content here. So let's look at the art of collaboration at work beyond Treasury. Look in the mirror, Treasury, and change the inherent bias we have at looking at marketing and sales and overhead as a means to drive budget and bottom line. Let's look at ourselves in Treasury relative to our internal customers, define our internal metrics of success. Let's define how we can impact sales, marketing, and capital with our skill sets. So let's look at how we're going to add value, how we can impact those with our skill sets. We don't need to own the data, but let's be involved in the standards of data. Quality is ensured, how analysis is done, getting the right information at the right time to the right folks. This is a novel idea, isn't it? Ask people what you can do to make them more successful. At lunch or something, at a gathering, just ask them, what are the 2 or 3 most annoying things at work that you face? What are the biggest barriers that you have? What is it that eats up your day that you just can't stand? Amazing conversation started. Remove one of those things, boom, friend for life. You need to establish clear lines of communication. We need to educate sales in terms of pricing issues, decisions, the impact. And this is not my thing usually, but since I've started in improv, role play at meetings, manage the perception of Treasury or lack thereof. We have to be seen as friendly, not Mr. or Mrs. No. Beyond work, what are we going to do here? Bank partners, let's understand our RAROC model of our partners. Let's ask them what it is. Let's make sure they have the right information. Educate your banks about your business and priorities. Ask them what they need to meet your expectations. I had extremely high expectations But once they ask me, what can I do to meet those, right? And maybe they can't. And then I'll say, well, you're not the right partner for me. Customers, understand how we impact the customer experience, collaborate with sales, find out how we can support customer relationship. Suppliers, let's understand how we impact the supplier experience. Let's collaborate with sales to find out how we can support our supplier relationship. So these are all extremely specific, usable things to empower your value in collaborating. And then your professional network. Ask how you can help your connections and mean it, right? Stay tuned to what your connections need. Anyone who's connected with me on LinkedIn will know, and I say it, but I mean it. Anyone reaches out to me and asks for something, if you're connected with me, I will give you much more than you give me, and that's perfectly fine. That's why I do what I do, because I enjoy working with people in the Treasury, Finance, APA, or in all professions. So that's what I like to do. Proactively share relevant information with your connections. Now, I might do that a little too often, and if I do that too, I apologize, but I'm honestly trying to pump information out that I think is going to add value to you in your job and make you better at your job and your career. And so please do that as well. Support LinkedIn, your contributions, offer congratulations, communicate connections, how you can collaborate with them, mutually beneficial endeavors. So I reach out to you for LinkedIn. Sometimes you don't get it directly, but I'm usually trying to say, how can we work together? How can I help you, right? And I think that's been incredibly powerful for a lot of my relationships. That's why I have done pretty well on webinars, is because folks like Giancarlo, we talk all the time. He calls me all the time. Not all the time, not as much as I like, because I like to talk to him every day. But we talk about the market, what's going on in Treasury, and it's incredibly powerful of how that collaboration can evolve. And then don't let your relationship momentum come to a halt. And so let's make sure that those things are going forward. So let me go ahead and hand the floor back over to the more interesting speaker today. So let's move to Giancarlo and say, okay, now you got the job as Treasury leader. How do we make it? How do we just really knock it out of the park, Giancarlo?
Thank you, Ernie. I love talking to you. That's why the exchange is so great. That's why we work still together after so many years, because yeah, this is one thing, and this may not apply to all, but for those who are starting, this is an interesting next 5 minutes will be very interesting for you to see this, and you can ask to get the slides, so you don't have to make notes. But this is the experience the many years of experience that Ernie and myself put together here into 5 slides. So it's very difficult sometimes to write everything in 5 slides, but it's a great takeaway, and hopefully it will help you. For those who are already in the Treasury world, you may recognize some patterns here. For those who are starting, feel free to also look at this just as a framework. So what is it that we recommend in the first 100 days? Well, obviously you have to understand, the company you're in. So due diligence, slowly move into the organization and look at all the Treasury related topics. The different kind of, we call them office politics, meaning how the mentality within the organization is working. So who is, let's say, deciding for which part of the business? Look at the organizational structure, if there is one. Sometimes there isn't one. It's pretty confusing. There are multiple roles in multiple places. Everything you can learn about the company. Then after that, if you have this picture already in your head, now look at your position. So what we call a quick safety check. Make sure, if there are any bottlenecks, look at those first of all. The short-term liquidity bottlenecks, because they could imply some risk. Make sure from a compliance perspective that you're looking into that also. Look at the processes. That's my strongest recommendation. And what I did also when I first started, I looked at the processes. So what kind of processes were in place? Did you see any risk? Probably you will find some, especially in the payment transaction processes, because I'm afraid to say, yes, we as treasurers, and I say we extra, we are responsible at the end if something goes wrong with payments. So because we are the Treasury, so be careful about that. Of course, look at potential short-term successes. You want to start in your organization, you want to people to respect you and see you as a partner, as somebody who they can trust, etc. But look at simple things. It's a very good. This is I think what Ernie wrote here. This is absolutely fantastic. Simple process optimization. It's sometimes a simple optimization can have incredible return on the investment you make. So look at that. Definitely, we did the same. Amy and I, we looked for a buddy at your hierarchical level, somebody who has a lot of experience in the company. They know the company, they know how people, let's say, think in the company, and that will definitely provide you with some quick events. If we look at now, if we go on to the next one, which is about key areas of relationship management. Obviously, you need to build the right relationship. Please be advised, this is important. How do you do it? Well, look at the business unit managers, yeah, depending on the structure, but you have unit managers, you have department managers, you have functional areas. Obviously, you will know who the VP is, who the CFO is, who the CEO is, etc. These are people you have to know how the reporting line is. Also the reporting line within your own organizational structure, so the Treasury's own team line of responsibility, and then look at two important elements: internal customers and external customers. Yeah, your internal customers are important because that is the, let's say, then the internal network you're going to look at. So the subsidiaries, anybody who's responsible for accounting, because it's related to Treasury, of course, controlling, depending, consolidation, tax-related topics, shared services, obviously the IT, our best friends of all. Unfortunately not. Yeah, IT-related topics, and anything to do with legal, HR, M&A, whatever you are, let's say, responsible for, please be aware that you need to understand who those are and how do you interface with them. And then, of course, the external customers. Those are the ones with whom you have mostly to do with, when it's to do with suppliers and, the banks, of course. Those are the ones you'll be talking to, system providers, auditors, investors, rating agency, depending on your role. Make sure you have a very good control over, you have a very good knowledge who they are, so you have a relationship to those ones. Let's go to the next slide, and it's going to be about initial meeting advice. So what questions you need to ask? So I would say, first of all, ask your peers and those around you what went well over the past few years. So, what have been the things that went well, and what are you critical of? I mean, what are the critical points? Yeah, what expectations do you have? From your own department, yeah, or the person you're reporting to. What are their expectations? So understand the expectations. It's a good advice to have regular communication. Jura fixes, whatever you call them, just have regular exchanges to make sure that everything is in line, so that you're not going in the wrong direction. Then, of course, begin to, if you can, within the first 100 days, to plan, the next months. So what's planned, what's important. Obviously, think about yourself. Yeah, don't forget to, you have to be successful in the first 100 days. You have to show that you have understood the complexity. And now, you want to look at the future collaboration. So what are the terms for the future collaboration, and do you have any further onboarding tips from your colleagues? If we move on, I think this is important now to look at the overall framework. So whenever you arrive, obviously there's a lot of things to look at. But I would also look into, the structure of the organization, the processes and overall framework. So what does the shareholder or the shareholder, the structure look like? And what should the shareholder expect from you? And remember, there's a certain level of expectation. This is a good one. Whenever I came into an organization like Treasury, the guidelines were sometimes very, very, very vague. Treasury guidelines is actually your rule book. And there is no better way of starting by making sure that the rules are clear and making sure that they are practiced universally from all the people within it. So how do you do that? I can help you there. Please let me know and ask me or Ernie, and we can guide you there. Look at the rules, of course. The rules, the IFRS, the MR FACTA. These are all relevant. Yeah, and look at them, how are they implemented, or how is compliance ensured? Because if you're not compliant, this will land on your table. Look at your current treasury system landscape, of course. What systems are you using? Are they consolidated? Are they not consolidated? Are they decentralized? Is everybody doing their own way? Do you gain the visibility? And yeah, what's the resource situation in treasury? I mean, you will have to look at this. Yeah, looking at the different qualification or training of the department employees. Who's doing what. What are the people doing in the subsidiaries? Are they making good choices, good decisions, or is this gonna all fall back in your head? And of course, at the end, you're gonna look at the number of employees in the department. I mean, how many people, how many FTEs you have responsible for yourself, and look at the budget you have allowed. Okay, so I think these are all great tips. I mean, I can't discuss all of them in detail today, but please feel free to get back to us whenever you need any support here. We're very delighted to do so. Look at also a best practice. Don't lose time on something which is already been solved. I would not recommend that, and we will not recommend that. So no need for action. Don't do anything. Just if it's working, something working, don't touch any, a working system. That's my recommendation. Long-term potential for improvement exists. Okay, no need for action. In the medium long term, maybe later on you want to change something, and short-term improvement absolutely essential. That's where you need to take some action. Yeah, in the short term, you do it during your quick safety check. So make sure you do that. Okay, what else? Technical matters. This can get complex. The validity of liquidity planning. Now, it depends how it's done. I would say probably most of it is semi-automated. So in some way is an automated treasury system, or maybe you have a payment system and the rest is consolidated per Excel. So make sure it is a valid liquidity planning, because you will be reporting this to the CFOs, and you have to check for risk and look at the strategy from a financial perspective. And then comes an important part, which is your bank landscape and bank communication. You have to be careful about this one here. Efficiency in treasury processes means, do you have a global standard in your payment transaction processes? So are you using a group-wide process in managing payments, and obviously concerning your transparency in the relations to bank accounts? Do you authorize signatories? I mean, do you know who has which power of attorney? This is very important, because it could be an auditing issue, and obviously the reporting has to be very clear. What else do we have for you today? I think my last two elements is a strategic treasury roadmap. So build your roadmap. What is the status quo of the current organization at the time you join? Look at the different risks of the existing risks you have there, and what action you need to take, and put a certain timeline to it. So make sure that you assess the how many people can support you in your department, and obviously ask for budget. Don't forget to ask for the required resources, because otherwise you will be missing them, and have a clear outline of the related areas. Last but not least, let me close this, let's say, this very important part of the roadmap. You have a real critical position in the organization. Don't forget this. You need to provide the highest level of competence. So you have to have trust in the line managers and colleagues and employees. So don't forget your position. It's important that you look at the measures and how these are discussed and agreed. Don't forget you need an agreement. I mean, it's one thing to discuss something, yeah, with the line managers and the treasury team, but you need to have an agreement. So you also need an agreement for all the different teams which are involved. Yeah, and present your ideas in in a proposal, and get advice from your peers, and make sure that the proposals are clear for improvement and change, which should be made in the organization, in your roadmap. So make it a very clear structure. This is an important tip from our side. No one should feel left out, because this is the only way you will get the commitment. I personally, I'm sure Ernie can share with me, we made some, let's say, initial mistakes. Sometimes we forgot IT, we forgot procurement, we forgot accounting. Not good, because you're nearly at the end of your decision making process, and all of a sudden somebody lifts their hands, and just to be in your way, they will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you did not ask me." So that's my final tip. Please be aware about having everybody involved at the table. Bring everybody at the table at the same time, so you avoid any risks. Any questions? Please get back to me. Back to you, Ernie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you much, Giancarlo, and thank you everyone for being patient with us. We have an extreme amount of content, but I think it's extremely valuable. So key takeaways, again, four things we'd like to leave with. Treasury success in today's world is about the right technology and right relationships. Let's keep it simple. Do I have the right technology? Do I have the right relationship? Ask yourself that often. Own technology, or it will negatively impact your career. You need to optimize your collaboration skills, and your first days in office after earning a Treasury leadership position are critical to your success in that role and into your journey up the corporate ladder. So I apologize that we did not have time for a Q&A, but of course we're happy to connect with you and answer any questions that you might have. And I would like to once again thank our partner today for today's webinar, TIS. I know you can see their commitment to thought leadership is very strong as we talked about career success, and that is rare in a partner, and so I'm happy that I have earned that trust. And so you see that commitment to serving the profession, and that's really what I'm all about, and that's what TIS is all about as well. Of course, I want to once again thank Giancarlo for his great content and insights. Always a pleasure. I encourage you all to visit TIS website. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave our polling question up for another few seconds or so. And to each and every one of you in the audience, I sincerely appreciate you and your support as I continue to do my best to offer as much valuable information as possible to the Treasury profession. And thank you very much, everyone, again, so much for your valuable time. Make the rest of your day great.